It gives you a sense after that news conference that we had this morning with the chairman of the Joint Chiefs and the Secretary of War of what the action actually looks like in the field. And we're going to bring in someone who knows all too well about the close-up view of this kind of kinetic activity. Retired four-star Air Force General Charles Wald. He is former Deputy Commander of the U.S. European Command, and he served more than 35 years in the United States military, flying combat missions over the Middle East as well. General, great to have you with us today. Thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you.
Glad to be here. Thank you, sir. There was a story that just posted a couple of minutes ago by Barak Ravid, who has very good sources in the Middle East and at the White House. And he is reporting this afternoon that the White House is asking Israel to halt strikes on Iran's energy infrastructure. And the bullet points underneath that are that these strikes harm the Iranian public, that the president aims to cooperate with Iran's oil sector after the war, kind of like what we've seen in Venezuela, and that the strikes could trigger massive Iranian retaliatory attacks on energy infrastructure across the Gulf states. What's your reaction to that development in this part of the story and this war, sir?
Actually, I think it's wise. I think I'll just have to say, you mentioned I've been in the military a long time. This is a very, very, very impressive campaign waged by the U.S. Government and military. Fantastic. We've had one glitch with the, sounds like on a girls' school, which was really sad. But overall, this has gone very well. I think we're coming toward the end of this particular phase. You know, the Israelis had this kind of a saying they'd use to go after Hamas over the years. It's called mowing the grass. They'd go in and address the threat, and then when they were taken down to a point that wasn't a threat again, they would stop. And then as it built up again, they would go back. I think we're going to get into that mode here. A couple things I think we ought to watch closely is once they get their ballistic missile threat to a point where it's manageable, which we're getting close to, and also to ensure the Straits of Hormuz for shipping stays open. You know, in 1985, the United States reflagged all the ships going through the Straits of Hormuz with the American flag and protected them. We could do something like that, but I think free flow of oil through the Persian Gulf, the destruction of Iran's ballistic missile capability, and having some kind of capability for a regime that, and we're not going to do regime change, but the country itself, I think, will rise up and have a regime change, and they have to have some infrastructure left at the end. So I think it's wise. Yeah,
so does this headline about the U.S. asking Israel to avoid targeting energy infrastructure in Iran, does that signal to you that the president feels that we may be getting close to the next stage of this, which would be protecting certain assets and also protecting the people of Iran to encourage exactly the next step that you just mentioned?
I absolutely believe what you just said is exactly what's happening. And it tells me that this portion of the conflict is coming to I wouldn't say an end, but winding down. I think we need to be very vigilant in the region. I think one of the things that hasn't been talked about much is the fact that the GCC countries, you know, Israel's done a fantastic job with us as partner, but the GCC countries have stepped up now, and I think it's time for us to have a grand alliance in the region with the GCC countries, Israel, not just politically, but militarily, and I think we're going to go down that path.
You know, there was a piece this morning, I believe, in Axios, which talked about how this looks more like a world war than anything that we have experienced since World War II in terms of these large-scale alliances. You've got 20 countries that are involved in this, the Strait of Hormuz, which you mentioned. You have France and Great Britain with sort of a delayed response, but also bringing assets into the region. Here's a map of the military assets in the Middle East, U.S., and then I'm going to follow that map by countries attacked by Iran since February 28th, when all of this started. Do you agree with that statement? Are we seeing the closest thing to a world war that we have seen since World War II?
I wouldn't go that far. It is definitely a major regional conflict. You know, Russia and China are on the sidelines here, mostly, except for Russia helping with intel. And there's a lot of other countries around the world that are involved, but it's a major regional conflict, and I think it's showing that we have an opportunity for a grand alliance in the region with our Arab partners, Israel, for the Abraham Accords, and to move forward with combined and common defense.
You know, I want to play for you. Obviously, you're a person with a very long and prestigious military history, and you probably don't like hearing too much from senators on Capitol Hill. But the reason I want to play these two senators talking about this conflict is to get your reaction as someone who has been on the ground and see how these things play out. Let's watch.
We seem to be on a path toward deploying American troops on the ground in Iran to accomplish any of the potential objectives here.
I'm very worried about how long this will drag on. We are hearing no logical estimates about when it will be over.
This has been going on for 10 days, General Wald. What's your reaction?
I think I have tremendous confidence in General Kane as the chairman of JCS and Admiral Brown in the theater. I don't see this as being a giant boots on the ground invasion. I think that would be a mistake. We've talked about this over the last couple of weeks ad infinitum. You know, we did well in Iraq in the beginning. We defeated the threat. Same thing in Afghanistan. Then we went in and decided we were going to change the country to be like us. It doesn't work. And so I think we should avoid major boots on the ground. I do think there probably are what has been described as sneakers on the ground. That would be maybe CIA or other people that are in coordination with the Israelis, and potentially, I say now, maybe a one-time operation to try to recover the nuclear uranium-rich product they have in Isfahan, potentially. But I would kind of frankly advise against that. I would go back and, as I said earlier, I'd mow the grass. If they start showing threats again in the future, I'd go back after them like we have here.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we spoke with the UN ambassador about that material, 900 pounds of enriched uranium at 60% levels, which obviously, if it falls into the wrong hands, would be a problem. And it seems like both sides now agree, even though there was discussion that it might have been moved before the June 12-day war, that it is buried at Isfahan. Doesn't it seem that it would need to be secured by responsible players?
Yeah, it does seem to be that way. I mean, I think, you know, we have fantastic intelligence. We have overhead intelligence. We can monitor it if we have to 24/7. Yep. I think we need to be prepared to go in. I was a big favor of the B-2s back in last June at Midnight Hammer. They can go back again. I think right now they're flying over Iran with B-1s and B-52s. B-52 is going to be 100 years old and retired. And the B-52 itself can carry big bombs, real big bombs. And so I think if we see activity where it's credible that they are going back in to recover that material or to build a weapon, then we go back after it just like we did in June.
Sir, it's a pleasure to have you here, and thank you so much for your decades of service. 4-star General Charles Wald, very good to have you with us. Thank you, sir.